Hi everyone, I've got a Roberts R200 here. I've had it for about 2 or 3 years actually. I bought it for about 4 or 5 quid at a car boot sale. And the reason I picked it up, I've already got a red one of these somewhere, I can't actually find it at the moment, is it's in fairly good condition. Sometimes these Roberts radios can be missing sections of the badge. The vinyl covering can be a little bit tatty around the corners here. Sometimes the handle is cracked. More often than not, one or more of the knob brights here are missing, and sometimes they don't work at all because they're all populated with AF 114 through 117 transistors, which you've got 1, 2, 3 in this one. This one does actually work a little bit, but it's quite poorly. Lastly, this thing's missing the wedge that holds the chassis in. The chassis itself is, or the bottom edge of the chassis is actually built on a bit of a slant, so when you push the wedges in, it actually forces the chassis upwards. It's not actually bolted in at all. So I've got one this side and one that side, and I've actually just got a little bit of plywood of sort of the same dimensions. Obviously this would have been imperial, as this radio would have been made in about 63, 64, and we've probably got metric here, which is that's about 9.5mm plywood. So I've cut my wedge out. I'm just going to get a plane and plane it down. So as I say, it does actually work at the moment. Oh, and there's a little bit of rust here. Now I've seen these really bad where someone's left the battery in, and this is the sort of battery they have in a PP9. Someone's just, put it in a cupboard away for years with the battery, and this whole area can be really badly corroded. So what I'm going to do is sort the wedge out so I can test it fully, because at the moment, and I can show you, at the moment, while it does make a noise, it clearly isn't very healthy. You can hear it. Now I don't know whether that's just the transistor's not working properly, or more likely it's the tuning capacitor. And I want to make another wedge so I can cam the chassis up, just to make sure it being dropped on one side, because you can literally move the chassis about. I want to make sure that because the other wedge isn't there to bring it up, it isn't actually stopping the tuning capacitor from working. And the other thing with tuning capacitors of this age, of course, is that they're mounted on rubber bearings, or sorry, rubber grommets, and this one's probably insulated, and it's gone rock hard. There's probably be 3 on this one, and if they've gone rock hard, they might not be doing their job properly. Or it's either the tuning vanes or the bearings need a bit of oil. But we should take the chassis out and have a look at it. So, and that's just one more little issue, one cosmetic issue. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a nice big ding in the middle here, which hopefully I can press out once I remove the speaker. So that's that. So first things first, we're gonna just have a look at this wedge and make sure it's nice and squared up. Right, so I've got my very old Stanley number 3 here. You don't really see these anymore. They were quite popular in schools, but you don't really see them anymore. I spent a lot of time restoring this because it was rusty to hell, as you can. I think it's quite old actually. You can see by the patina on the front thing here how old it was, and I've just cleaned the iron up, and then the cap underneath as well, the chip breaker thing on the bottom there, sorry, underneath here. Then I've trued the sole up and the sides, but I like working with old woodwork tools. I don't actually use them. I'm not particularly good at woodwork. I just like old tools. So I've got my wedge here. You probably can't see, but I've used a gentleman's back saw, proper old model making saw. So I use one of those to cut the wedge itself, and I'm just going to square it up because I've cut it at a bit of an angle. So all I'm going to do is just square that up. That's much better. And these wedges have got a little, one of these eyelet things in there, one of these screw eyes. You just see it. And I couldn't buy ones exactly the same. The ones today are made of much thinner wire, so I've got some brass ones which I'll just screw in there. But that looks much better now. So just close that bottom up so it looks a bit nicer. Right, I'm going to continue doing this because I suspect watching me plane a bit of wood's really boring. Right, so here's my wedge all planed up nice and true. As I say, I've now got to put a little hole in the back here for the screw eye, and I've just gone into my little pin vise drawer with all my drill bits in it, and I went and bought these this morning from our local hardware shop, and the first thing I saw when I just gone into my drill bits is a whole nother packet. Oh well. So we've got spares forever now. So I'm just going to drill a little hole with a pin vise and put a screw eye in there. Right, I've got my new wedge installed, and now we're going to see whether it actually made any difference, and it wasn't. The tuning, or the bad tuning, wasn't caused by a bent chassis, and no. It's still there, so it's definitely the tuning capacitor that is wrong. Right, so chassis out then. So all you do is just get hold of these wedges, just pull them out, except where you can't get it out because you pushed it too tight. There we go. And the chassis should just come out now. If it wasn't caught behind the wreck scene. Right. Let me, I'll fiddle off camera because it's snagged on the wreck scene down the side here, and I'll come back. Well, that really was a struggle to get out. What has happened is the chassis is quite a tight fit, front to back, sliding out, so you have to release the top and then slowly bringing it out. And what was happening is the side of the chassis here was catching on the covering here, and it's actually tore it a little bit. And I can see I'm not the first person to ever get this out and have the same trouble. Yeah, here's the chassis and the speaker. It's a 3 ohm speaker made by Roller. Let's get you in a little bit closer onto the chassis itself, and if you can see, hopefully you can see what I meant by the camming action of these wedges when they go in. Forces the chassis upwards. And what I didn't realise is that there's a hole at the top of this original one, and that should be screwed into the side. As well as wedging it, there should be a screw hole either side. You can see this side, the Rexing's just the glue's peeled away, so that'll need softening, and I can't see any evidence of a screw hole here. Oh, maybe there. Maybe. But anyway, and I noticed there's a star washer here, and that's rusted away, and that holds the handle on. That's really rusty. The serial number, there's actually like a first version, and then a second version, and then a third version of this. So if I can get the original version went up to serial number 36546. The next version was 36 to 70,000, and then those onwards from 70,001, and this is 1009 680, so quite a later set, I would say. Right, so let's begin with the what I'm going to do is just squirt a little bit of lubrication onto the tuning capacitor there and see if that makes any improvement to the tuning. It might just be dry ball bearings, but I'm afraid I don't think it is. But we can have a go and see if it makes any difference. Right, I've given the tuning capacitor a bit of lube, and I use this dry lube stuff which is meant for bicycle chains. It's a little bit expensive, but it doesn't gum up like 3-in-1 oil, which is like a mineral oil. I just use that now, and because I apply it on the tip of a screwdriver, it sticks a lot better than oil, which just seems to drip everywhere. So I've been using that for about a year now, and it seems to work absolutely fine. It's more like a sort of dry grease, but and it's organic evidently. Wow. Anyway, so let's see if that's made the slightest bit of difference. Yes, I would say. It's a direct drive tuning capacitor, so there's no cord in between. Absolutely. So it was dry bearings and not, thankfully, not touching capacitor vanes. But what I might do anyway is replace these grommets, because they're like stone and they should be very pliable rubber. But that's one of the last things I'll do, really. I want to get a lot of these capacitors out, and amazingly it's still working on its original transistors. Right, so the next thing to do is fire up the soldering iron, and we'll get changing some of these awful plastic capacitors, which are usually dry. They're actually riveted, and all the electrolyte just escapes through the rivet there. There's no real attempt to seal them at the end here. But then again, I don't suppose they were meant to last 50 odd years, or 55 I suppose in the case of this particular set. As usual, because I like to keep the general appearance of the radio, I'm going to try and put a brand new electrolytic and then just pop the case over the top, so it just keeps the general appearance of an old radio. And I'm going to kill that rust next, because that's going to take a couple of hours with some jelly on it, rust removal jelly. So there we go, at least it seems to be working properly. It could of course fail at any time with these transistors, and undoubtedly it will. I can't even see what they are. So this one's missing. They usually have a stamp on top or on the side of what they are. These ones had to stamp on the top. That one's, I don't know, this is an AF117, and this one's an AF117 as well. And there's 2 waxed capacitors there. Right, soldering iron, capacitor removal. You've seen it all before, but I should probably film a little bit of it anyway. Right, so far I've replaced this capacitor here and this one here, and all I've done is put an axial capacitor in, cut the leads off this, and then pop this over the top. This literally can pull off, but I just want to keep the appearance, and I've replaced this capacitor here with a modern type, and all I'll do there is just cut the end out of that and just put it over the top. That one might need a little bit of help just sticking that on, because this capacitor was somewhat larger. That capacitor was this sort of size, 100 UF. But anyway, the point is, let's see how much it's improved, and I can tell you quite a lot. The sound's more fuller now.
It's a bit different to what with Sainsbury's. He was very much.
We've now got a lot more bass in there, and I've replaced the capacitor across the line, and I've also gone back towards just after the amplifier, or one of the first amplifier, and replaced a capacitor. So it's all sort of coming back up to life now, rather than the dead sort of mush it was slightly before. So I shall continue. I've got quite a lot of capacitors here, flipping loads of the things. These are all the small value ones. I bought, there was a TV repair shop shutting down, and I bought a stack of bags of capacitors. Anyway, I shall continue. I'm sure you've seen soldering before, it's all quite boring, and I'll come back when I've got some more. Right, and just how I stuff these Plessy capacitors. Sometimes I'll just slice them through the middle, just roll them round on a Stanley knife, you know, just roll them round, and then slice them and pull them apart, and then put a bit of sellotape over the joint, because that's what's in the middle. Sometimes I'll do that. What I'm doing here, and I've got a dental bit like a grinder, and I can't imagine using that on your teeth. Blech. And I'm just grinding out the end cap here. That's all I'm doing. And then they just slot over electrolytic. So I've done all these on the board. I'm just about to put the top on this one, and I've got this one left to go. And you couldn't really tell that that's not original. Not that it matters, but it sort of matters to me. Right, so what I'm actually doing is taking this little drill with a 4" dental bit, and just on the rivet that's riveting the top of these, I'm just running it round and round and round slowly, and it'll eventually free up this, and there's the inside. And you're not going to pull it out with this bit of silver tape here. You need to get either a pair of long nose pliers if you're lucky and pull it out. If you get really stuck, you can use like a cork puller, you know, like a wine cork puller, if it will fit down the bore of that, because they're quite wide. And then once you pull that out and clean it out, snip the wire here, the connection there from the upper terminal, the positive terminal, and that'll be ready to stick over the top of your replacement capacitor. Easy. So, armed long nose pliers, here we go. If this is going to take too long, I'm going to stop filming, because these are dry as hell. Oh, it's coming out straight away, he says. So there we go, it's just coming out there. So that's the middle of it, and it is absolutely bone dry. They should be slightly, very slightly damp. This one isn't. as expected with one of these. And there we go. So just get a pair of cutters, snip the lead off, make sure you don't leave it lying on the workbench, because your radio will not thank you for being shorted. And that's ready to pop back on the capacitor like that. There. It's got to push it down a little bit further and adjust it, but just like that, and that's not going to come off really, not unless you give it a pull. Easy.